All right, welcome back to a quick little episode of Gamer Back, whatever the hell. Um, just been in a Pokemon mood lately, and I whipped up this thing because um the Scarlet Violet DLC kind of has you traveling to a lot of different regions, which, if you don't know, you actually get to, in a total, travel to three regions in Scarlet Violet. Not exactly fully explore those regions, but you get to travel Paldea, which is obviously the main land in Scarlet Violet. You get to go to Kitakami, which is described to be a new region that we've never been to in any game before, and you even get to, technically be in Unova with the Blueberry Academy, just not mainland Unova. So you do touch down in three different regions in this game, which is kind of cool. And it got me thinking about the map of what people call Poke Earth in general. So I looked up this a while ago actually, and I updated it today. And I just wanted to get my thoughts out there because that's what I like to do. Testing. Okay, my audio is recording. Sorry about that. And so I made this. I actually uploaded to Reddit because I do get a lot of good feedback on there. And so I'm going to run through it really quickly, make sure it's not too long because we just recorded a 2 hour long podcast episode yesterday, which is a little exhausting. So I'm going to try to blast through this pretty quickly. And so I divvied this up into land masses because that's kind of how it made sense to me. So you have this, what I'm going to call the first landmass, which is comprised of Kanto, Johto, Sinnoh, Kitakami, Hoenn, and the Sevi Islands, right? This is kind of all one landmass. Well, not exactly a landmass because these are separated, but let's just call it a continent. Like these locations all comprise one like thing, and this is all but confirmed for the most part. There is some like dispute with among people with some like minor details, but it's generally well like accepted that these locations are all pretty close to each other. Um, because obviously Johto and Kanto are physically connected. We know that 100% fact because you walk from Johto to Kanto in the games. Kanto's connected to the Sevi Islands. The Sevi Islands are also connected to Hoenn. We know that because in Fire Red Leaf Green and Ruby Sapphire Emerald, there are events that let you go to the Sevi Islands in both games, so they have to be close to each other. And the only option for where Hoenn could be in respect to Kanto is south or east, because north of Johto, which would also mean north of Kanto, is Sinnoh. Where exactly north it is kind of unsure. It's just somewhere north because the Sinjoh ruins are north of Johto, and Sinnoh is north of the Sinjoh ruins. So there is something in between Johto and Sinnoh, like they're not directly connected, but they are relatively close enough where they're it's you know implied to be close. Not to mention just the geography here. You have the mountain range in between Johto and Kanto, and the mountain range that goes up to Sinnoh. So it's actually more likely that Sinnoh is kind of in the middle, like north of the middle of this mountain range, because the mountain range could just extend straight north. And the Kitakami is a little less clear. In the games, we see Blood Moon Ursaluna swam from Hisui, which is what Sinnoh was previously called, to Kitakami. So we know it's at least within Ursaluna swimming distance, right? Which Ursaluna is not a water type. It's actually a ground type, meaning it's weak to the water. So it must be close enough for a ground type to survive swimming through the ocean. And that's kind of where all that comes into play. So that's more than less with a few, you know, discrepancies confirmed. I don't want to say confirmed because nothing's confirmed. They can easily retcon stuff, and but this is like the easy stuff, is what I'm saying. When we get into the weird stuff, which I'll get into in a little bit, like the distance between other regions, that's when stuff starts to get a little harder to explain. You see here, Alola and Kanto. I have these blue arrows, by the way, indicate ocean. So we do know that people travel from boat from Alola to Kanto pretty frequently, which I'm not saying that these two regions are close together, but I'm just saying that the closest region to Alola might be Kanto, which once again does match up with the real world, with the closest body of land to Hawaii being Japan. So that it's probably the case that these two aren't close together. It's just that Kanto is the only closest region to Alola, and you have to travel by water. Um, let's see. Moving on to the next landmass, or what I thought was the next landmass, but I'll get into this. Is this these two? Ignore Paldea at the bottom. I've actually reconsidered this position, but this is Galar, and this is Kalos, right? And we know from the games. So this is where things get a little bit convoluted. But in X and Y and in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, there's an NPC that claims they have swam. So two NPCs, right? This is not the same guy. At least I don't think it is. It could be, but it's two different NPCs that say, "Oh, I swam from Kalos to Hoenn," and another one says, "I swam from Hoenn to Kalos." Which that's like, if you want to say that Pokemon Earth is based off of the real world Earth, that makes zero sense because that means that somehow Hoenn and Kalos are swimming distance from each other, which does obviously that's not going to happen in the real world. You can't swim from France to Japan unless you like I don't know are superhuman and swim around Africa or something. But so that's kind of implying that the Poke Earth and our Earth is not 1-to-1 as like some people kind of think, but it might be like 1-to-2 where like some things match up, but some things just don't. Basically, yeah, there are two NPCs in the game which say, "Oh, I swam from Kalos to Hoenn," and vice versa. And here's the issue with this that I've seen people discuss is that these people are saying it as an exaggeration, saying that they swam like how when you say like, "Oh man, I just walked 10 miles," but really, you just walked like kind of far. It's kind of just an exaggeration. We're saying that, "Oh, I just swam from Hoenn to Kalos" is like a figure of speech in the Pokemon world for saying that like you just swam really far, even if you did not actually swim from these two locations. But the fact that there's two different people saying it is what makes me kind of lean away from that. Although, who am I to say? So it's possible that Kalos and Hoenn are swimming distance from each other. If you want to take what those NPCs say as 100% fact on face value, or you can interpret it as a figure of speech and they're not actually swimming distance from each other. Um, Something I have actually heard someone bring up regarding the position of Kalos to everything else as well is that Professor Sycamore, the professor from X and Y, he studied in Sinnoh with Professor Rowan. And we do know Sycamore travels by train a lot, right? Because that's just like in the post game of X and Y, we see the notes that his younger self left him in the train stations and stuff. So I have actually had someone say or propose that Kalos is on the same landmass as these regions, and that Sycamore traveled to Sinnoh by train, which obviously we see to the west is water, but to the east is land. So it is possible to kind of plug in Kalos somewhere to the west of Sinnoh. That that's pretty circumstantial, the whole train thing. Um, where it's just like Sycamore likes trains, and he's also been to Sinnoh, so he could have taken a train to Sinnoh, but we're just that's just kind of that is a possibility, but I don't think it's as plausible as because also I guess that would make the swim from like here if it was like to the southwest of Sinnoh and Hoenn's to the south of Kanto, that also makes that swim possible. But once again, there's just not enough evidence for either of those things really. But so yeah, this is interesting. And something that is believable, however, is there is an NPC in Galar that says they swam from Galar to to Kalos. Um, where exactly is completely unclear because this NPC is in Wyndon. So I guess if I were to rearrange this map, you can put Kalos above Galar. That way you can swim between. Because I guess Galar is the UK but flipped upside down too. Yeah, that does make sense. So I guess if I had to rearrange this, I put Kalos above Galar. So that would make Galar south of Kalos, and then still swimming. You can still kind of, if you want to work this out, make the swimming distance thing between Hoenn and Kalos. And obviously we have Isle of Armor, which is like off the coast, and you have Crown Tundra, which is connected to Galar. So basically, what we have in the second landmass is just Galar and the Kalos, connected by a small ocean and then the TLC areas, and Kalos being north of Galar, and swimming distance somehow from from Hoenn. And now we're getting into the weirder stuff. This is the stuff that I kind of like because it's super heavy speculation, and anyone can kind of think of their own solution to this problem, uh, which is where the hell is Unova? And I threw in the Ore region because why not? Excuse me. But basically, so we don't know where Unova is at all. It's completely just, there's no indication that it's near any other region. In fact, it's pretty indicated that's far away from every other region. And that's kind of the same thing with Ore, except Ore is like has very little access to any body of water, and we don't even know if that's the ocean. You know, that could just be a big ass lake. But if you want to go base it off of the real world, it can be assumed that possibly Unova shares a landmass with Ore because Ore is based off of Arizona and Unova is based off of New York. But they share a landmass just super far away. That's one proposition, right? The other, which also obviously the Blueberry Academy is somewhere west in the ocean of Unova. Doesn't need to be pointed out though. Um, so the only indication of location we get in Unova in respect to any other region is Sinnoh. And that is because when you are in Black and White 2 and you're doing the Azelf Yuxi Mesprit quest, I forget who says it, or if it's just like a throwaway line in like some book or something, but it says that there is a theory. So this is like a theory in the Pokemon world. So it's like double speculative really, where the deepest part of a cave in Unova connects through underground tunnels to Sinnoh, and that's how the Lake Trio traveled to Unova. Which that's like kind of far fetched, right? If you want to like take it a step further, and you can even go into Hollow Earth theory, where like they traveled super deep underground to the point where like it's almost like a shortcut, you know, because like obviously traveling around the world from Japan to New York is going to be longer than traveling straight through the middle. So if you want to propose like a Hollow Earth theory or something like that, that would actually probably work better than just a cave system from New York to Japan, right? But that's just still just a like speculation in the Pokemon world, and especially in a Black and White game where theories are like proven to be false before, like the Kyurem's origin story having like two different origin stories and like things in those games being unclear and up to interpretation. It just kind of like, you know, that could be a myth, or it could be Hollow Earth, or it could be that they actually are on the same landmass, but just really far away. But that's kind of just up in the air. And something else I'd like to point out that I don't think I have written down here is that the nature preserve in Black and White 2 actually is not a part of Unova. It is. It's said that it's not in Unova. It's outside of Unova. It's far away from Unova. So you know, that could even be, I'm not sure if that's considered a region or if it's just a different location, but I'd like to imagine it Because Skyla flies you north of Unova to the mountains, right? And north of New York City is the Adirondack mountain range. So I like to imagine that that's kind of maybe based off that a little bit. But let's see, is there anything else I need to talk about here? Simplify everything so far. Yeah, this is the map I whipped up previously, which I do need to change, but Photoshop's a bitch and doesn't let me like mess with things the way I want to. So if I had to change things, oh yeah, and my revision now. The one last thing I need to talk about is I made this before Scarlet Violet DLC, and in the DLC, so before the DLC, I assumed that Paldea was connected to Kalos, as a lot of people also assumed because France and Spain are connected. Um, but in the DLC, it's actually said that Paldea, or it's not said that Paldea is anywhere, but it said Kitakami is east of Paldea, which obviously does not make sense with my map unless you take this entire landmass and put it to the left, aka the west of Hoenn, um, which would also work to be fair. But if you see, this is where things are confusing, but yeah, because I guess yeah, this whole landmass can be to the east of Hoenn. That does work if you want to move the Galar, Kalos, Paldea landmass to the east. No, but then no, that doesn't make sense. I'm sorry because there's no water to the west of. So yeah, that this is where Kalos causes a lot of problems. Kalos only has water to the west, so Kalos has to be east of Hoenn, meaning Paldea is not connected to Hoenn. Or I'm sorry, Paldea is not connected to Kalos as we previously thought, meaning Paldea goes to the west of the Kanto Hoenn Johto landmass because Kitakami's there, which is weird. But let's do a quick summary, right? Unova, we have no idea where it is, besides the fact that it might possibly be connected to Sinnoh, but that's just like super loose. Or we have no idea also, besides the fact that if you want to go for the real world, it might share a landmass with Unova. Then we have this nice, easy landmass of all the first four regions and Kitakami. That's easy. We know that um, uh, blanking on Alola is somewhere across the ocean, meaning to the west of Kanto. And then we have Galar and Paldea being connected, but you can kind of it's up to interpretation whether or not which one is north of and which one is south. But that doesn't really matter all that much. I'm just trying to do the relative position to everything else. Those two are connected and must be to the west of Hoenn because of the swimming thing. If you say the swimming thing is actually a figure of speech, then you can move this whole landmass to the east, and that makes sense. But if not, then you're kind of locked. You're like locked into this position where Kalos has to be to the west of Hoenn. And then, unless like what we see off map here is just the ocean, right? And we just don't see it, so we don't know it. There are lots of possibilities with that. But basically, for now, what we do know of from the maps is that Kalos is east of Hoenn. And since Paldea is west of Kitakami, Paldea cannot be connected to these regions. It goes somewhere over here, meaning we also don't really know where it is. And also, it can't be it can't be in the same time zone as Unova because Unova, Kitakami, and Paldea all are in different time zones. We do know that. So basically, we don't know anything about Unova. We don't know anything about Or. We don't know anything about Paldea besides that it's to the east. So realistically, like I only have Unova in this position because of the tunnel thing, and that's why it's a question mark. Because like, what the fuck, That's so realistically, you can put Unova anywhere. You can put Or anywhere. But you can put Paldea anywhere as long as it's east of Paldea and far enough to be in a different time zone. And that's about it. That's my discussion here. And it makes sense to me, but I've had people kind of bring up like different arguments and different fan canons and what makes sense to them. And I hear it out, and I think that there's a lot of interesting discussion to be had with relative position of Pokemon geography, especially when it comes to very like smaller character interactions. Also, you want to hear? There's a whole thing with the Steven traveling to Hoenn. or I'm sorry, Stephen traveling to Kalos, where he says he crosses three oceans, which obviously oceans vary in size because you have like the Mediterranean Sea, which is relatively smaller compared to like the Pacific Ocean. But that can also be a figure of speech. So it's like kind of determining what's a figure of speech and and what's to be taken as fact, and then other hints that the game gives us, such as Lieutenant Surge possibly being from Unova. So that could also imply some type of, well, it doesn't even actually imply any distance between Kanto and Unova, just because he's from a place doesn't mean it's close to the other, although that could be a case. But the way I interpret it is Unova, Paldea, or are relatively unknown, besides Paldea being to the west. You have this landmass is basically confirmed, which is nice. That's like not up in the air. And then Galar and Kalos have to be to the west of Hoenn, and then Alola has to be to the west of Kanto. That's basically it. And obviously there's like the Pokemon Ranger regions, which the canonicity of those games can definitely be like questioned. Like there's lots of Pokemon spin-offs that take place in different regions that like, is that canon? Is that not canon? And if you consider it canon, then by all means go ahead. I don't know. That's why I didn't include it. Like I'm just unsure. I don't play those games enough to know the canonicity there. So I just didn't include it. I didn't include Or. I know some people don't consider Or canon, but or like it talks about other regions enough where it definitely can be, and nothing in the Or games contradicts anything in the main series games. So to me, it might as well be canon, just pretty disconnected. Which if I played the Ranger games, then I'd know, similar to how I have played the XD and Coliseum. Either way, that's my take on this. I kept it short this time, so I'm gonna head out, and I'll probably upload this in a couple days or something. After a couple days after this, the podcast upload. Bye.